In this problem, we're going to apply vector resolution to a force problem. We have a small child pulls a wagon with a force of 120 newtons directed at an angle of 40 degrees above the horizontal. We want to find the x component of this force and the y component of this force. So we're going to resolve it into its components, which is going to be helpful on later when we're solving other types of force problems. We start with a diagram showing the force. So here's the object, the wagon, and we have the force being applied. It's 120 newtons, and it's at a 40-degree angle with the horizontal. We then want to find out what is the x component, which we'll label as f with a subscript of x. And we want to find out what is the y component, which we will label as f with a subscript of y. Now, in order to do this, again, we're going to use SOHCAHTOA as we've done in the past. So it's good to label the sides. The 120 is our hypotenuse, that is the longest of the sides. The 40 degrees is on the left, so the opposite of that is on the right. The FY is the opposite side. And then the side touching the angle, but not the hypotenuse, is the adjacent. Hard to ask, what is the x component? So we'll solve for that first. To get the x component, we want the adjacent side, and we know the hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse, we're going to use cosine for letter A. We have that our cosine of 40 degrees is the adjacent side, which is our unknown, fx, divided by our hypotenuse, which is 120 newtons. Now remember that this cosine of 40 degrees simply represents a number. You can either look it up on a trig table or type it into your calculator. But if you find the cosine of 40 degrees, it is 0.766. Then to solve for fx, we multiply 120 on each side. And we have that the x component turns out to be 91.9. Of course, we need units. All forces are measured in newtons. So this x component is as well. Now we need to solve for the y component in letter B. And to solve for the y component, we need to find the opposite side, and we know the hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse means we're going to use the sine. Again, remember that this sine of 40 degrees simply represents a number. If you have a calculator where you can type it in, then you can do so. Otherwise, you look it up on a trig table and get that it is 0.643. Just as before, to solve for Fy, we're going to multiply each side by 120. And we get that the y component is 77.1 newtons. So just like before, we're going to use our sine and our cosine to solve for those two components. It is simply vector resolution applied to forces.